I'm Lance Abbott, and I work at the Savannah River site, which is managed by Savannah River Nuclear Solutions as the M&O contractor. I run the Operational Technology Center of Excellence, and the unique fact is I'm probably the only speaker who's going to have more hair than his picture does during the event. So, welcome. This is a collaborative event. It requires participation from everybody. The Digital Transformation Committee is a collaborative organization, and we want everyone to engage. So this is definitely not going to be a lecture from the panel to the audience. Hopefully it's going to be the other way around, if anything. The agenda today, we're going to go over a brief welcome and introduction. That's what this is. We'll go over some member business. We'll have some nominations for the leadership team, some topics discussion and voting, and we'll have an audience interactive panel discussion. As I said, it's audience interactive on Gen AI and manufacturing and agentic AI. So those are topics that seem to be on everybody's mind these days. And then we'll have a wrap up and we'll make it over to the reception. So I know we won't be too late. So the mission of the Digital Transformation Committee, council, committee, club, whatever that C is in this particular one, is to enable industry to keep abreast of the many emerging technologies and business trends, to learn from each other. And I think that's the key here, is to learn from each other. Eligibility. So this is kind of a unique element of the DTC. It's open to people and organizations that are users of the software, hardware, and process automation systems. It is not open to individuals or companies who are suppliers of the above components. So if you're a vendor or a supplier, we're grateful that you're here, and we will look forward to seeing you in 2 hours at the reception, but you can't be here right now for this particular meeting. So thank you for being here at ARC. It's not open to individuals or companies who are also members of the media. And if somebody's job changes and it doesn't appropriate, then they can be removed. So that's the basics of things today. And once again, the key here today and in all the meetings that we have is engagement. It's a community. It's driven at the bi-monthly meetings. Everyone's expected to share and actively engage in open communication and conversation. And the members are encouraged to support these meetings through participation or be panelists or find subject matter experts throughout their company or their contact list who can help support the meetings as well. And everyone's expected to share information and participate in relevant surveys as needed. So with that, I will introduce Patrick Arnold, and he will lead us through the member business.
All right, thanks everybody for being here. I'm Patrick, an analyst with ARC, and I've been helping out with the DTC. We're just going to go over a little bit of member business today. So just a little bit of a history of the DTC. It's this vibrant global community launched at the ARC Forum in 2018. It's got a global end user only community of more than 2,300 members. And the magic of the DTC is that everyone is collaborating and working together to share knowledge. We've got online meetings, and if with your help, we can decide on the topics for those here. It's discussion oriented and focused on everyone's experiences. And every year we have an annual gathering here at the ARC Industry Forum, as well as our ARC European Forum, where you can set the priorities for the coming year and really guide the discussion to the things that are most relevant to you. And just to keep everything above board here, we have our antitrust checklist. So we don't want to involve any pricing or transportation rates, market procedures, anything like that. There's the full list of policies and procedures there at that ARC website link at the bottom, if you're interested in perusing through those. And here's just a little overview of what we covered last season at the DTC. So we've got connected workers, knowledge capture best practices, Gen AI opportunities, data automation and management, sustainability. These are all the kind of topics that we talked about last season, and we're excited to get some more on the books for next year. And just to highlight a few other ARC events, we've got the Europe Forum coming up. If you are excited about what ARC is doing at the forum here, you can get even more excited when it's in Spain. Happy to have you or any of your colleagues there. We've also got some ARC forums in Asia. We've got one in Tokyo, one in India, one in Singapore. And the DTC Asia is all online. They don't have physical events. And usually the fourth Thursday of every month. We've got guest speakers there from a diverse set of companies talking about a diverse set of topics as well. Just a little highlight here for the European Forum. We will be having a DTC in-person meeting there on May 5th. So that's going to be a great opportunity to connect with the end user community. And just a couple slides here talking about the ways that ARC can better operationalize our relationship with you guys. We'd love to have our end user community participate, and we'd love to get that feedback from the end user community to better work together. We've got services designed specifically for the end user community. We've got our executive advisory service, which I wanted to highlight here. It's a regular interactive cadence that helps you compare performance with other industry leaders on various topics, discover the different strengths and weaknesses, and get that data-driven strategic advice where you really need it. Some things here, we've got research services and special interest groups. Right now we're facilitating a group on open access digital twins. We've also started doing executive summits. We've had some pretty successful ones this year. To bring together industry leaders to showcase their solutions and share best practices. Again, it's part of the magic of this system where you can bring together people who are really where the rubber hits the road on some of these emerging topics and learn from one another to better make use of this. If you're interested in any more of that stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But with that, I'll pass it over to Mark.
All right, fun stuff. Okay, so one of the things we do at this event is we actually have some voting and some nominations. So let's go forward. We have a leadership team. Lance is part of that leadership team. And we have an election process, and we go through this every year. The success of this group, this community, depends on active leadership. We rely on them to find speakers and panelists for the panels that we host during the year. So currently it's composed, there's several of us from ARC that help kind of do the admin behind the scenes. And then we have representatives from our end user community. Okay. The role of the team, the leadership team, is basically governance, right? What do we do? How do we do it? What are the ideas that need to happen or need to change? How we do things? So that's what they do. And the idea here is we're going to get names for people who would like to be on that team. Okay. Okay, this is the current team. You'll notice we wanted to have representation from various industries. So we've got pharmaceutical, we've got oil and gas, we got chemicals. I don't know what you call SNRS. What's that?
Department of Energy.
Department of Energy. So yeah, they deal with nuclear stuff. But anyway, it's a diverse group because digital transformation is more than just an industry thing, right? Okay, and this is a team from ARC. So this is the election cycle. We will take names here, and then we'll go through an election cycle that's online, and that's the schedule. But we'll we'll send an email out and do the nomination process, election process online, and we'll get the results out, and we'll send that out to the community. Okay? So if you'd like to nominate someone, that could be you. Okay, you're welcome to do this. We have a survey, and this is how you get to it. So if you'd like to do that now, you can, or you can wait for the email if we have your email. All right? But I'll give you a chance to scan that. I'll wait till I see no more phones up, I guess. Okay, let me know if it doesn't work. That was okay. So the next thing I'm going to walk us through is the topic selection for the coming year. So this is a little more involved because there's more topics, but we have a number of different main topics, headers, and inside there's different ones inside or underneath each one. So on your phone, it should look something of that nature. We need your name, select what you want. There should be a selection to say, if you pick one of these topics, would you like to be a panelist? And the panelist, it's a light load. You basically call in. We do like a 10-minute intro beforehand, make sure everything's working. And then we have a conversation online, and we engage with the community. The community talks and has questions, and you can ask questions of that community. So who's been a panelist on the team here? Did you find it hard? No? No? Okay, so don't be scared about that. If you want to be a panelist, please speak up. And again, this is a community, we want you to share things. So this is the link. It'll start, I'm going to do it the next page. Will show us some of the results. It'll take a little bit to go through those topics, especially on a phone, so I get it. I don't need the, oops. How many are new to the DTC? This is the first time you come to it. Okay, okay, good. So you know that we do 6 meetings a year. We do a bi-monthly 1-hour panel that we host, and during that time we have a conversation on one of these topics, and data quality seems really popular. How about that? Not surprised, actually. Is this little scan code too small? Yeah. Yeah. Let me see if I can go backwards. There we go. Sign in.
It did make me sign in for the second QR code. Not sure why.
But the first.
I signed into my Microsoft account. I don't think it would rank pretty quickly.
Not working. Okay. All right. Well, we will do plan 2, which is I will send an email out with a link, and we will do the community vote. And we won't be able to obviously show the results here, but that's fine because we don't need to be hung up on this either. So, all right. Okay, so now we're going to go into our panel. This is the thing to go for. Rajesh, if you'd like to come out. And the other panelists, Lance, Audie, and Mike. Oh.
Did I sign up for this?
No, you are too. All right.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, we're talking. So one of the things about our panel here is, just like we do online, it's interactive. So the question, the general topic is generative AI, right? That was a big thing this year. People wanted to talk about it today. And what this group is going to do is they're going to interact with you about Gen AI and what they've done. But at the same time, we're going to share experience. So hopefully, we can start engaging with you folks. What have you done with Gen AI, right? So, who's implemented something with Gen AI? Okay, cool. Would you like to share anything about your experience?
Hey everybody, Mike Samasco from Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnology, not the camera part of the company, but the biotech part. Inside our company, we've done the simplistic chatbot experience with Microsoft's OpenAI partnership, and we've trained it only on internet-based data so far. We haven't put our own data into it. We have a roadmap for that. And people find it, I use it every day to help me write better, to summarize things. It does have general internet-based knowledge, so you can do some basic research on there as well to help you figure some stuff out. It does an excellent job helping you formulate a job description, especially when your HR department has all these extra fields for a new job type, and you don't have the wherewithal to type all that stuff out from scratch. So it gives you a great starting point. And then I think what gets really interesting is when you can start to add your own data into the mix and your own information. So that's something that at my old company we had started to do to build, let's call it like a shop floor co-pilot as an example, to help interpret real live data streams and combine them with documentation to help us determine what the next viable step might be in an operation or process to keep a process in its optimum yield zone. So that was really interesting and fun as well.
I'm Adi Punuru with ExxonMobil. I think at the corporate-wide, we have also rolled out the Copilot, and there are several people using it. At the same time, we are looking at other parties also looking at the Gen AI stuff. So we are looking more in terms of how to support process operations. how you can integrate various data sources and how to help the operations. So that's still, we are working on that. But it's not as easy as really looking into the documents and searching and provide an answer. But these are real use cases with working with the time series data and all. There are a lot of challenges there, so we are working through that now.
Okay. My name is Rajesh Singh. I work for Train Technology as a digital solutions leader. Before I go into what I'm going to say, I wanted to say that mostly I will be discussing is market related. There may be some exceptions. Now, what we have done, from AI perspective, multiple things. Similar to what Mike mentioned, we have developed our own chat GPT version of Train Technologies. You could ask almost anything amazing. You can just say, write an email to congratulate someone on retirement. It will write very good email, and then probably you can take 2 minutes to just glance it through, adjust it. You could put 10 pages marketing materials, and you could ask them to edit for you or suggest a better version. And not only that, but then personally myself, we have looked into, and actually we have implemented some of the solutions, is predictive maintenance for some of the product that we have, we make and we sell it to our customers. We were not satisfied by only those two. We went ahead and we acquired an AI company. If you can look, BrainBox AI, we acquired that. And it is amazing what BrainBox AI does for us. It is basically helping our sustainability journey and reducing the carbon footprint and saving the real dollar money for our consumers. So think of a hotel like this. If you talk to the hotel owner or manager and say, I can help you reduce 30% of your utility company, what do you think about it? And that's what that company is doing. I'll come back to this a little bit later, but I wanted to save some time for colleagues. But basically, it is growing into every single area. As you could imagine, 2023, when ChatGPT 4 was introduced, 24 was kind of a little bit of stabilization. And 25, the war has started. You see what DeepSeek is doing and others are doing. So really, it is going to be kind of no option for us. We have to get into this sooner or later. But with that, I'll pause and come back later.
Yes, once again, I'm Lance Abbott with Savannah Riverside. We're very similar to what Mike was talking about, where we have an on-prem version of OpenAI solution that is not yet trained on any of our own data. But ours certainly is useful, and we've been generating some use cases, anything from writing emails to working on scopes of work for procurement documents to, lots of things like that. One of the things that's been interesting to us on that journey was when we opened it up, it was almost surprising the low level of use in the engineering and IT departments. So one of the things that we wound up doing just in the last month or two was having, a tech talk that was focused on, here are 6 different methods, or 6 different ways that you might find this useful in your daily work, just to help spark that insight. So. And we have, we have lots of plans that we're working on standing up, but that's where we are right now.
Great. Would anybody like to share? Actually, Luke, can you get a mic? Anybody like to share what they're doing? Julie, did you put your hand up? Excellent, I got one.
All right. right. Sort of like the panelists said, we've used several versions, both as a chat, sort of a chat bot on steroids, and also the within Microsoft Office, using Microsoft Copilot, which is really, really helpful. I mean, it's especially if you use Microsoft Teams, it's wonderful. It can catch you up if you join a meeting late. It can give you action items, really helpful. But what we're not doing at all is anything in the OT space. And I keep hearing promises that it can, interpret PLC code for you or write code for you, which is a little scary. I mean, I don't disagree that, particularly for some simple things at like the equipment module level, yeah, it can probably, write a timing sequence, a simple timer sequence, sure. But other things, we're going to want to make sure we really test it before we trust it and put it in a high hazardous plant. So if anyone's had any experiences doing something like that, I'd really like to hear about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. NVIDIA is actually using AI to write more AI code, doing exactly, but they're doing it in the IT space. Go ahead.
So Alex Bedding with Seadrill. So actually, we're doing exactly what you're discussing there. We're finding that generative AI is a productivity builder and a huge benefit for skilled OT control systems engineers who are maybe lacking in some of the IT skills base and coding base. So we're currently building a sandbox sensor system internally to augment some of our rigs. And the testing on there that's going on at the moment is taking it from providing the OT skills with the IT skills to correctly structure some of the IT security and run all of that through the ringer before we then start to roll out the rest of the system.
So are you working with somebody to train your generative AI in that, or is...
No, that is a straight off-the-shelf generative AI tool that we're using for that.
Okay. Okay.
Let me add a quick comment, but before I do, let me ask a question. How many people think that you need data to build the AI model? Anyone?
I'll buy you.
For which AI model?
Well, absolutely. You are 100% correct. But technology has, evolved so much. If you don't have data, in case of AGVs, VGVs, AMR, you were talking about OT space, you can create some of your own test scenario and then let it build from there. So of course data is needed, but if you don't have data, it doesn't stop you. So I wanted to add your comment there. Okay.
I may have some interesting ideas to add on to this from my own experience. So I have two use cases that I typically use with generative AI. One is more on the software development side, where, like you said, you don't want generative AI generate entire applications. Fully agree with that. But it does help a lot with just asking questions on how to solve certain things, and it will come up with solutions that you didn't really realize it could work that way. So before you would go to Stack Overflow, probably maybe some developers out here that know that website, GenAI is a very good alternative to things like Stack Overflow. So keep it small, I would say, and let it guide you and give you ideas rather than have it generate entire solutions for you. I think that is at least my takeaway. The other use case is that's not really applicable to well, it's applicable to our work, but it's not really from my professional career. I have 2 little kids, and we need to rehearse homework for them, to prepare them for the tests. It's very funny because they have some hard copies with information, and they get tests on that. So what we do these days, just take a picture of the paper, the hard copy, and we ask generative AI, hey, give me some questions for an 8th grader or a 6th grader, and it just generates a questionnaire. So that gives me the opportunity to apply this for work as well. It can take my documentation and it can create training material. It can create these nice multiple choice questions. So it's very helpful creating things quickly. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I completely agree. I used ours just the other day to help create some marketing material. I don't work in marketing, but they wanted some information around data and AI and whatnot. And the way I constructed the prompts, I was able to get some basic information that I wanted to share. But then I said, can you turn this into marketing material for me? And it said, oh, absolutely. And then, by the way, how many people are polite and say please and thank you? I do. I read somewhere that it actually responds better to that when you do that. So I don't know if that's true, but it seems to do a good job. So yeah, you can expand your domain knowledge through just a basic LLM usage, right? So I'm not a marketer, right? I'm on the IT side of the house of things. And I felt like I learned something as I was doing it too, which is pretty good. So I'm developing myself and some materials and making use of the tool. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we just started, so.
So, much like Kelly? So much like her, we are more embarking on the OT space. We have a lot of efforts in the IT arena, and no disrespect, but they don't know OT.
I respectfully disagree.
Well, the analytics tools in Gen AI are infancy, and there's not been a lot of focus on that. More of the, I'll say, novelty, although it's a great tool to have in your toolbox for some of these activities that'll make your emails better. Engineers don't write well, so it definitely cleans up my writing. But getting down into the OT space and machine analytics and the predictive maintenance and all of that fun stuff, there's a missing fundamental piece.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. So we have seen some challenges in generative AI LLMs, especially working on the OT side, process operations. So sometimes it can give wrong answers. So, so we have to be thorough in making sure our questions are properly asked, prompt engineering. We're looking at dynamic orchestration, all those things to be done very well, so that the model is, all the models are well trained. Otherwise, you can get into trouble. So.
Lucas, AB InBev. In fact, I agree very much with you. Not just doesn't have all the knowledge, but sometimes it can make something up. I faced a situation where we're discussing a technical thing, and I wanted to know more about a certain type of equipment that we have in the beverage industry, and then I typed it there. Give me a description, also a flow chart of how you would put this equipment there, right? How you organize that, and it made that up completely. It wasn't the equipment. It changed the name. You put it there. So it's really dangerous if you don't know what you're dealing with. You can make some terrible mistakes there. Yeah, you need need to verify that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. In my last company, we were always making sure a human was in the loop of any decision making. Mostly, though, it goes back to the OT discussion before. It was all about doing good old-fashioned math, right? Like that's really where you get most of the benefit in process manufacturing is hardcore math. The LLM part of it is to put wrappers and extra information around of it. It doesn't change the actual algorithms you might be using. You're augmenting what you're doing. And I think if we design experiences correctly and well and thoughtfully, the level of our operators can be brought down a few notches because we all struggle with getting operators in various types of manufacturing industries. If we can augment their abilities more with the small language model, so the idea of your information and data all trained, your math being done for you. This is stuff we were experimenting with in basically leading an operator through the steps, like suggesting the next best set of steps to achieve a goal where they don't have to do the math themselves or they don't have to understand it. They have to be taught what it is. They have to, trust that the people that built it are doing the right thing. So there's a lot of inline trust building, so to speak, before you let it loose. But it is possible to slowly get into that world. But you're right, it's so early.
I think so, yeah. I think a lot of training has to be done, as you mentioned, right? So we have to work carefully this problem. Otherwise, if you throw something in front of operations and if they don't like it, they will never use it.
That's true. You have a comment there?
And I was just going to say, one of the things that we actually did, the first setup is you actually have to tell it in a prompt that you can save, is tell it that hallucinations are not allowed. And if you do not understand this, an acceptable response is say, I don't have data to reflect an answer, and it performs great from that. We've actually gone in and tried to make up information. I was guilty of doing that as much as I could. But once we had put that in place, it actually did solve that issue, and it's better to get that response back when it just says, I don't have any current information that I can find for this. Do you want me to search for something else? I actually, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I've got the ChatGPT on my phone right now, and while in the airports, I was going through one of our projects, but I always give it the voice that I want it to respond in. So you are an expert in code development. What I found helpful is when you tell it what type of project you're doing and what language you want, at least it gives you that basic foundation. For a lot of software development guys, the hardest part is just getting started when you've got a blank sheet of paper. So talking to it in a normal voice of what your requirements are, what your users are looking for, and getting that to start. One of the first things I do is ask it, what other questions would you have for me? So it turns it around. So it starts facilitating the conversation to start filling it out for you. Going back and saying, look for syntax errors. We've actually saved sets of prompts where it said, here, I want you to search the syntax. I want you to look for spelling errors. I want you to look for ways to improve the coding. And once it has all the prompts, we've gone out there and just randomly grabbed projects off like GitHub and stuck them in there and said, how would you improve this? So it gives the feedback. And so once your younger developer goes through there and sees how they're doing it, it can help feed that in. Is it going to be an expert coder? I don't think so. But take your expert coder that's been here for 15, 20 years and hates commenting out code. I'm very surprised at its ability. If you told it what you were trying to accomplish and fed in all the code, it actually did a very, very good job of commenting out the sections and telling you what was being done step by step. So from an efficiency point of view and allowing your senior developers to not do the mundane things, and then going through the risk of saying, hey, I'm a senior developer, I did this, and give it to an entry-level coder and say, hey, you read it, understand it, and comment it out a little bit better. I haven't seen problems on that side, but we've really just been working with general code that's out there that's readily available, so I'm not quite sure if you got something very specific to your organization. And then the one funny thing that people commented was its ability to give you good variable names. I don't know how many people hate having to come up with a good variable, but it did a really good job of understanding what you were trying to accomplish and giving you proposed variable names to go through that actually made sense. So,
wow. Very good point. Looks like you know the tricks how to make it work. You mentioned very good points about prompts and things like that. Mike mentioned about a small language model and trust. Of course, when you are building, just like think of any software development you have done, you go through testing and you figure it out, something is not working right, you go back. So it's a kind of similar cycle you go through. Once you start to trust a little bit, it gets, refine it and gets better and better. I wanted to go back to OT example. In OT world, we have equipments, that are new, old, and older. Probably, 30, 40 years old equipment is still running. It's hard to connect and get the data, but technology is making it a little bit better. You can get some data, not a whole lot of data. And then one of the question comes to all manufacturers that I have so much equipment here, so old, I can't do, AI here, I can't do, that's kind of a standard problem for everybody. You are not alone. But one thing we have learned is, looking to the other side, if you start to define and tell AI, these are the normal behavior for my asset, and then take it from there, you would be amazed that within 2-3 weeks how good it gets, because it is relying on the normal behavior and everything else it is taking like abnormal, and then you start to get the data as you go on, and it's really amazing. Just wanted to share that part.
So wouldn't that be the concept of golden batch?
I'm sorry, can you?
Wouldn't that be the concept of golden batch? That work be optimal?
You could say partially yes. I mean, artificial intelligence or Gen AI, all kind of, artificial intelligence, it is all built on all the principles that we have learned over the years. So sometimes this, sometimes that, sometimes it's a mix of a lot of other things, whether it is data or algorithm that is figuring out something new based on what we have provided. So I see some relation there.
In the example I was talking about before, we were doing golden batch analysis, the hardcore math stuff, watching what our critical process parameters were, and then layering a wrapper around that with English to try to help explain it. The funny thing is, you give that to a process data scientist and they go, I can read a graph, why are you giving me this? And then we said, it's not for you. We want to understand if this is correct because we want to put it in front of operators. And they're like, you're basically multiplying their impact in your organization because there's usually only a handful of them and there are many more operators. So we found that useful.
Sorry, the equipment qualification.
I think what Raju mentioned was about having abnormal event detection sort of things, right? So, but again, it depends upon the trained set of data. So here we have to be careful also which data you train it, but sometimes it can be normal sometimes and sometimes it can be abnormal. So this can get into trouble for us. Sometimes we train on normal period and anything outside, it comes out, hey, this is wrong, but it is true for some cases. This is where we lose credibility with operations. That's where the challenges we are facing right now. So.
Yep, and the key is the trust. Yeah. Use your subject matter expert to receive that outcome and try to define and train. So training and trusting, it takes a little bit time, but it gets better, a lot more than initially you would think. Any other comments, question?
I've got a question for you. The the programming language that you were referring to, is that more of an IT language, or was it more of an OT language?
OT.
OT?
You could actually determine whichever one you want to go in there. And actually, we tried to do a conversion where we said, take this version of code and change it into JSON. We put in PLC and one other. It told you where it had the problems and where the concerns with the conversion were, which I wouldn't have thought of. So I actually appreciated that part. And even on relational databases, if you're doing it really performs well on SQL. That's not a problem at all in there. But if you gave it the language that you were looking for, it did well in Java, but it had some C and all that stuff. If you went to the normal languages on there, it was actually doing a really good job. We were jokingly, because of a concern that came up last week, with some extremely old programs that were running on, I want to say Vista or something, ironically. People said, do you think there's a possibility of actually literally giving it the entire set of code and trying to say, give me the best language? And I actually did prefer that when we said, what language would you suggest? Now, I don't know if there was a bias on that's where it was most comfortable. But if you did that on there, it would actually make recommendations and tell you where some of the concerns were and the things you'd have to take into consideration for that. So I think that was very helpful on that side.
Interesting.
So when you said OT languages, were you meaning things like function block diagram or ladder logic, or what were you thinking about?
In my mind, I'm thinking like Fortran, CL.
Okay.
Something that a lot of them were the proprietary languages, right? So they're specific to a manufacturer's controller, like Honeywell, or maybe Allen Bradley has the old ones were a ladder logic of some sort.
Yeah. Now you have me curious, because I would like to see if there's enough proprietary information that's out there to see if it could bridge that gap. I'm very curious now.
Yeah, I know a lot of the manufacturers are looking into that themselves,
Yeah, because I was thinking about specifically where we have some older control systems that we're looking at replacing with different vendors. How would that translation work? Could we at least get it to provide adequate comments on what the intent of this section was trying to do in the batching or the automation?
Right.
And I bet it would be very good at that with potentially just, some vendor user manuals read into it to create a RAG or something like that to put a wrapper around it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see if you could take the vendor manual on the CLs, for example, that particular one, and have it ingested so they would know this function did X, whatever area in the memory.
As long as you own that data, you could do that, right? You can't just do that, though.
When you mean own the data?
Well, I mean, it's their proprietary manual. You probably would run into a legal issue if you did that on your own.
But I bought the hardware.
Fair enough. I don't know. But it does bring up a good issue, though, right? Like, in this world, and the way OpenAI trained its models, it's all publicly available information and or sketchily available information from the internet, right? So as you build your own internalized versions of this, I know our legal team is one of the core team members on what we're doing with Gen AI. So not just to protect us maybe from doing something wrong, let's say with the outside world, but really also inside to make sure we're making the right decisions with information like customer data. So if there's customer data in our systems, we don't want to misuse that.
And I was going to say one of the things that reverse engineering certain things, getting requirements written and then getting test cases out of it, it actually does a very good job of recommending potential test cases that you might want to run through on there. So that saves a lot of time where people didn't have a lot of enjoyment on some of the mundane tasks.
I got a question for the panel. First of all, if you could be careful with your nuclear facility there and not have the model write your code. So let's get started with that. The other question is, the panel, all of you talk at some point about LLMs and training. So I'd be curious what you mean by training. So the reason I'm asking is retraining an LLM takes insane amount of computational power. So if you're actually doing this, I'd be curious how. So the other approach that you're usually taking is RAG model, right? So that's not training a model. So, and if you execute the model, then you would use the model as is, right? And you just add the data pretty much to the prompt, which means you can do all of this without leaking any data. You just execute the LLM on your own hardware. And in that case, I wouldn't really understand what the concern with the proprietary data would be. So if you could comment on this, what you're actually doing on training and where your concern is with data leakage in a RAG model.
So I'll say that we haven't done it yet, but our plan is to create some RAG models based on the data that we have available for some of the applications we're working towards, and to have that be an all on-prem, isolated solution, so it isn't going to leak anywhere. Yeah.
That's what you consider training.
Yeah, we misused the word training, I think.
Okay.
It was the same thing. RAG models are the way to go for all that.
I think that's true. That's what we are working, RAG model and dynamic orchestration.
Sure, yeah, but you can run something on hardware, so we have to follow with the proprietary data.
Oh, that was more just misuse of it, that's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think he was referring to data that another company owns, the vendor software.
I think we said you're concerned about the negative leakages, right? Your customer is a customer here. Now, if you do regular on hardware, who cares? Now, if you want to use, online execute the model, say on AWS on the open infrastructure, that may be a different story. So I'm kind of wondering where that problem is between RAG and training and running on your own hardware, or is that something that's being considered?
It depends on what your business is, right? So we make products for other people. So there are intellectual properties in our systems. So there's oftentimes contracts about what we can and can't do with that information. So we have to take that into account when we're doing things with the data. Yeah, it's a unique case maybe.
Anybody else out in the audience want to comment on that question? Okay. Kind of came to a stop all of a sudden.
I'll add one, use case here. It's February. Everybody is working on their objective settings for the year and things like that. If you have your own internal version of, Gen AI kind of thing, it does amazing job. You give them little bit points and it writes so well, so nicely.
The admin assistant, let them just generate the
Well,
you don't even have to look at it, you just give it to her.
It's funny though, it's like people that don't use this stuff or don't know how to use it or aren't exposed to it, they look at you like you're a wizard when you start whipping something out in like 5 minutes. Like, it really does speed up your thought process and what you can do to analyze things or share things back. And then I've found that gives an opportunity to help people learn as well. So like, how did you do that? And then you can show them how you did it, how you went about it. So it's like an inbuilt training mechanism almost when people see you do something or turn around something really quickly. Although, like you said back there, that's my secret.
no, it's all good.
I thought when you said it was February, you were going to write your Valentine's Day card using it.
Well, actually, to be very honest, We used it to write some kind of song based on our achievements for some of the meetings and things like that, and we were amazed how good it was. So really, I haven't tried that performance appraisal part, but I'm sure probably gonna do a little better job than I would do.
I had regular ChatGPT write a poem for my dad's 80th birthday, and my mom thought I wrote the poem. She was crying. I was like, oh my gosh, no. I'm not this great with words.
So I haven't heard anybody mention, or maybe they just hinted at it, but using it for frontline operation. Because there's a decent amount of training, and to your point, Adi, you can't have it hallucinate.
Exactly.
Is that part of your game plan, or?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, you're gonna, like 2 years out, 3 years out?
We want to roll it out yesterday, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
But I think first thing is we need to look into stage-wise approach. Before it goes to frontline workforce, we need to fully vet out the product first. Mm-hmm. So maybe the engineering support and see. So once they approve it, then we can go to the next level. Because operators are very, right? So we have to be thoroughly vetted that process.
I think it also depends on what problem you're trying to solve, right? So for where we're starting at with it, it's more important for us to work on that hardcore math problem about yield optimizations in our processes than worrying about maybe putting a wrapper around it yet, as I like to call it. So like we're still working on that process analytic side.
So I'm curious, are you using generative AI to do that?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
Good old-fashioned scientists, first principle, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's a key point, is that you want to use the right tool for the job. And generative AI is notoriously bad at math. And it makes sense by how it works. It doesn't do math, it just generates the next letter.
Infers, yeah. I mean, how many people have senior executives pushing for you to adopt generative AI to solve all your problems? I mean, I've seen quite a bit of that, right? So I find that a good portion of my job is explaining what it can and can't do, like you were just saying, and then focusing our scarce resources on where we're going to get the most value. And that they very much understand. So.
Yeah, I tried to do that. Executives pushing down actions to generative AI. I said, hey, get rid of my executive management. Didn't work. Now we got rid of
Let me change gear a little bit. I was in a Salesforce conference, a few months ago, and they are, bringing the AI agents, bots, So as a customer, if you have, if you have to reschedule your appointment for service or things like that, it kind of eliminates all the people in between and basically looking into your schedule. It reschedules it for somewhere, it works for both parties and things like that. But it's amazing. I was hoping that we could bring it into, we're not there, hoping that we could bring it into factory environment. If I have a disruption and if you could tell me that, hey, you do have, materials and human, all that to produce this work order. Go ahead and reschedule. I'm going to reschedule it for you and do it. But days are not, far, from now. It's going to happen someday. There are tools available, but I'm hoping that, maybe a year, 2 years, it's going to be there. But we are looking into ERP, Salesforce, all the, manufacturing operations management software, slowly one use case here, next day another use cases, it is coming up, and really it is mind-boggling what it is doing. So, if you think about outside your, work environment, you see what's going on. It is not an option. It is going to be kind of, daily use technology. Thank you.
Anyone like to comment? Okay, because I think we kind of talked about this through, don't you? Is there something else some other aspect of Gen AI use case that you want to discuss?
I mentioned in the beginning that I think it is part of Gen AI that will come back to what companies are doing mostly in sustainability and those kind, like my company is really, connected with that, Trend Technologies, These AI models are doing such a great thing looking into, your demand for your energy, weather forecast, and looking into all the mechanical system that makes your HVAC system work, and, tapping into the customer base and the grid, and basically borrowing the energy and passing from one customer to another. It is really amazing things happening in the industry that what technology is able to do and how it is benefiting end users, the customers. So it's not only win for one, but win for three sides. Customer, of course, company like us, but also for the environment. Less carbon emission. Those kind of things.
A question for the group.
Yeah.
So we spoke about going back to the OT side. Do you have which model or which company or algorithm is working better for the OT based on your experience, like OpenAI, Google, from all these different versions that are available? What do you believe it's bringing more reliable information when you try it in OT space today? Because OpenAI for me is definitely not really doing that.
Maybe next year I'll have an answer on that. So we are working with some vendors. If it works out, then I can say yes or no.
Are you talking about production floor data? You talking about process data from production?
In general, topics related to OT. Even I think a friend there was talking about programming language, all that. So this kind of space.
It's not generative AI, and that's kind of why I didn't bring it up. But I mean, we are doing, and I guess I'll give a pitch for the company right now. But AI Ops, which was a company that was formed, it's AI for APC. And so it's not generative, anything around generative AI, but it's taking large chunks of data that's coming from the process floor. And it takes a process engineer to basically kind of understand the whole process, okay? So you got to know how to take the, lack of a better term, the butt end and feed it forward. So it's got a couple of things that are involved in it. I mean, if anybody's familiar with APC and you go to DMC Plus and those type of applications, it was always a matrix where the system could kind of learn and find its spot in the matrix to operate at the optimum. What this does is a step further. It's not locked into a matrix. So it's basically learning the process as it goes, and it rebuilds the model every time through a cycle. So if it's involved in a batch plan, every time you go through a batch, it re-deciphers what happened in that previous batch. In a continuous plan, it's doing it from back end to front end to improve on quality and everything else. Now, we're in the very early stages of it. Matter of fact, as we sit here today, it's actually being implemented in one of the plants. And we're going to see what the results are, but it's a small company. It was formed by process engineers and process chemists, and who really understand how process works. So it kind of gets that built into the model. And on the other side, on configuration side, no, never. Not for a PLC, not for a DCL system. But I mean, think about it. Manufacturers have been trying to figure out how to back engineer for at least 3 decades now. A Siemens person is trying to figure out how to, reverse engineer what's in an ABB system, okay? They've been trying to do that for years, and that's not perfect. I mean, decades, and that's not perfected. It can work, though, to check. You can use it to check from one revision to the next.
So I think, go ahead, I'll come back later.
I had one quick follow-up question for you. Is this AI ops thing, I'm interested in this because they're trying to pitch something to us internally. Is it performing the actual automation level as well, or is it sending you optimized set points?
Right now, we're not allowing to actually optimize the process. Okay. We will be. Right now, it's manipulating the set points as a test run for production people, and then at the same time, he's running another model behind it right now. Actually, just basically do those.
I was just going to comment about that. It's not about the algorithm, because you chase the best of the best. It's actually what data you have to feed the model. So it's make sure you have a process. This is like any data systems. You need to have a way to clean the data, garbage in, garbage out. Very true here. And you'll probably have restrictions in your company for what algorithms you have access to. So start with what you have access to. Think about how you want to clean the data. Think about how you want to, there's a lot of techniques to extract the data, cleanse the data, present the data, search the data. Lots of ways to optimize it, but start with what you have.
Mark, it's really cool. Last year we were talking about stuff like this. These are all just like dreams and ideas. Now all these people are doing so many different things and really making progress and trying stuff. Like this is a huge difference 1 year makes. Like the amount of people last year who would have been like, oh, we're playing around with this stuff or doing something. It was like two people maybe. That's pretty impressive.
My name's Joe Riddle from Savannah Riverside, just as well as Lance. You were speaking about AI Ops doing this, is the name of the company? Yes. Is that right? So we were leery about trying anything, and so we were thinking we'd just let the AI system give us recommendations, not actually control your controller at this time, but you are going to let it control the controller?
Once we get through the pilot phase.
After the pilot.
Right now, the pilot phase is going to basically drive the set points, but eventually we're going to let it go.
You're going to let it go?
We run the model in a test lab right against the side of the actual plant on several occasions for it to relearn through more process data. So every time we ran it, we were able to discover some other parameters, some other issues that we could bring into the model that will help it improve. And so we kept doing that until we finally got a model to the point where
So your mathematical model in the background is not AI Ops, it's some other tool we use like MATLAB or something like that?
It's all AI.
It's AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have not to that nature, I have a reference to
So is it a machine learning model?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I'm hearing, right, Gen AI is too wishy-washy, right? And so you need an AI technology that's more bounded and more deterministic. Is that fair?
You need something, it's kind of like the difference that was set up here. I'm getting off anyway. It's kind of what you had said a little bit earlier, is the fact that generative AI stuff is not very good at math. And so you kind of got to get away from that a little bit. It kind of leans, it's still an AI concept, but it's leaning more toward what you would do, what we've been doing for a couple of years now on machine learning, on our vehicle. It's what we're doing on, it's still it's what we're doing on machine learning. So what we've been doing for quite a number of years now with machine learning, especially on some of our larger compressors.
Mm-hmm. Have you looked at anything along the causal AI models, or is that too involved?
Right now, I would say it's too involved, at least for where we are. I mean, what the ability in at least for my APC team to understand what we're doing with AI ops was a little bit easier for them to take into consideration if we're doing it.
Quick comment, probably you need a better modeling and simulation tool to improve your process, but eventually, AI will get there. You mentioned about some of the, Gen AI use cases into manufacturing. I think, guided asset maintenance is one case that manufacturers are seeing benefit from Gen AI. Anything that is related to searching, so if you are a manufacturer of engineer configure to order those kind of products, and if you're looking for your work instructions, things like that, or vision-based, quality system. It's amazing. I'm not gonna, name particular company, but there was a use case I know very closely. They took the cell phone, iPhone, and they attached to their, one of the product. We took about 200 pictures, and he started to give amazing, quality results. And again, based on all the pictures, so it was no, bigger mathematical model, anything, just based on all those picture it took, it started to Gen AI. So the very good results, how operators were doing the wiring and, things like that. So it's coming up in manufacturing slowly. It's getting there.
Anyone else have a comment on that? No?
I think in terms of the picture, I know some companies are doing the furnace flame and try to see where they are. I think a lot of development has been done in that direction. We are piloting that also.
Anybody doing something different with Gen AI or AI in general that they'd like to share?
So one of the things that we do is, we talk about, when we talk about Gen AI, it seems like a lot of people would mean LLMs, right? So LLMs, large language models, are not good at math because, well, they're language models. There certainly is Gen AI available that is good at math, but it works slightly different. So what we're trying to do for process safety is using LLMs in batch mode, so not as an interactive tool with the users or agents or something like this, but to read all the textual information that we have, or those information that's not accessible to normal algorithms, and then fill a graph with that. So taking important features out of documentation that we have and now filling this into a graph, and then do the actual inference, if you will, so answering questions to the system on the graph. We're just starting with this, but it turns out that this seems to be very promising. So all those items that are just not language because they're really logical inference, you can just run it on a graph very efficiently. But getting that graph filled, populated initially is very difficult because of the information you have is written for humans, and you can use an LLM then to interpret this. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of computational power to do this. Go through a couple of 10,000 documents. Well, the cloud is expensive and it'll take time. Right. So
is that going through HAZOP data, or is that?
It's a whole bunch of different data sources. We're looking at incident data, we're incident reporting, right? So we have those. We found out that the classifications that is manually done, the data quality is not always that good. In fact, if you run statistics on it, you find out that value that is first in the drop-down boxes is the most common one. It kind of tells you where that came from. But the textual data is relatively good. So what you need to interpret, so you can run an LLM on it. And there's HAZOP up data, obviously, as well. We haven't done that yet, but we're working on it. Then we have a whole bunch of mobile tools for people to have safety observations. All of those are not integrated. Well, on a graph you can integrate them. And then there's maintenance data. So you have an incident, and well, why not look at maintenance data that led up to that incident? And then maybe as there's a pattern in there, maybe you find this pattern elsewhere where you didn't have an incident yet. And maybe, if you're lucky, I don't know, we haven't done that yet. But if you're lucky, maybe you can be proactive versus reactive. But the initial idea, because we're talking about Gen AI here, right? So it's trying to take the textual data and put it in a form that you can run inference on it.
Do you think you will be able to identify near misses that you didn't identify in the past with that? Or is that something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we hope so, sure. Yeah. We've seen a couple actually already, but I'm not sure whether you can just generalize that.
Sure.
You mentioned about being proactive, and again, it's a Gen AI. Some of the manufacturers uses for some of the, workstation that has complex, operations. Basically, Gen AI, putting in terms of avatar picture and showing that you have to do this, first this, and then next operation, and next operation, and next operation. And then immediately after that, it is comparing the quality, being proactive right there, and catching, any defects and any, thing like that. So now you think combining both, and it is telling your operators, what you are supposed to do when you have, batch of one. Every product is different than the one you make. So it is helping you with picture, with video. That's kind of work instruction in a better way. But then immediately it is comparing. It has a camera installed. It is comparing and catching your quality defects. So just wanted to tie that in.
So what tools are you using for the video comparison?
I'm not supposed to mention here. If you are interested, I'll tell you there are some tools for this, and actually there are some vendor products that they have incorporated it, and it is, companies are using it. But again, it starts with, you putting up the standard pictures, things like that, and then, it learns after that.
I haven't tested it out with Copilot, but without going into the things that are free, Adobe AI. For anybody that has to do the presentations and you get tired of using those same stock photos that are just with Microsoft, it does a great job. If you'll take the time and say, I need an image of engineers in a field wearing PPE and a lightning storm, did an amazing job for that. So I was able to get some very custom pictures that I wanted for a presentation, and that worked really well. So getting those images worked well. The video generation, not so much, because once it starts making you can actually find the flaws where AI has problems with things, because I needed puppies, believe it or not, for this thing. And you can tell that it's licking, but it winds up licking its whole face or something. So you can find the flaws. So it has problems with fast motion. So if you need videos, if you need custom images, that's the nicest thing, being able to describe what you want to see. It's, in my opinion, it was better than doing the old standard, hey, Google image, describe it, and have to go through 20 to find it. It actually was giving you a more custom version of what you're looking for. And then also the weird thing is, Lance knows, we have an artificial intelligence and, augmented reality and virtual reality group, and they're about to create a training program for it. So we've got a long script, we need it read, and we want it nice and smooth. I've done it before, and it's extremely costly when we bring our marketing group in to videotape us. We actually have a voiceover actor that reads our scripts for us. Well, as soon as one of the executives says he wants to change 2 words, we have to go record the whole thing over again. Whereas when we were using the tool and reading it through there, we didn't didn't care. I mean, every time you redid it, it's like 4 minutes for every. Unfortunately, the rendering is about 4 minutes for 1 minute of text. So if you need a 20-minute long thing, you got quite a bit of time that you. I learned that the hard way. I was going to do a presentation, and I backed out at the last minute and let the system generate it. I recorded a video of me doing it, and it filled in everything for me, but it took too long for it. So I had the generic character there, but the script reading, and you just tell it, I need enthusiasm, I need serious, so you can highlight those sections, and it reads it in those tones. I was extremely impressed with it. I told everybody, I said, for this presentation, I did this about 20 minutes ago, and it took me it took more time to render it than it did to do it, and I think it did a decent job. I don't know what other people thought, but later on that afternoon when it finished rendering for me, it would have been, I mean, if I'd have done that, I really would have got brownie points, because it was 2 minutes of recording my voice and my motions in front of the camera, and it did a good job, except for at the very end, I don't know why it felt the need to say like that, and it was completely out of context. But I said, outside of that, to our group, I told them if I gave it a grade, I would have given it an 88. There were a couple spots where the enunciation or the tempo was wrong, but I didn't put any time into editing it. I said, here's what it is, let it go. So I was pretty impressed with that. So if you've got people that just don't feel comfortable talking and reading things out, if you've got to do a production on there and you want to cut out some of the time, that was a great tool. I made a couple changes, and it didn't take any amount of time. And as far as I was concerned, it was free. I didn't have to go back to anybody else for it.
Hey, I wanted to make a quick comment. If you're not, part of digital transformation group, I would highly encourage everyone to be part of this group. We four are sitting here doesn't mean that, we know more than you guys. This is what we do. We learn from each other. The mistakes that you have made, so somebody else doesn't make mistakes. And what else somebody else is doing that we can learn and do it in our organization or learn from it. That's what we do. We learn from mistakes. We share our ideas.
Right. So, I was just wanted to clarify, did you record your voice and then it used your voice to do it?
Yeah, it gave you about 8 different sentences to say, and it said, read this with excitement, and it actually give that, it said, read this professionally, pause. And so after you do that, it renders the whole thing, but it did an amazing thing. My wife was cracking up, and she said, why did you do this?
Oh, wow, that's funny. Okay, well, I think we've talked enough, huh? Yeah, okay. So I think this is let's see, your turn, Luke. So thank you, panelists. While we're waiting for Luke, oh, you're ready? Yep. That's a QR code for joining.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, folks. I'm going to preface this by saying I am completely biased when it comes to the DTC community. I was originally brought in 3 years ago at ARC with a primary role of helping facilitate engagement within this group. It's been my baby for my 3 years here. So I really appreciate you guys showing up in person. Obviously, the conversation I thought was very engaged. But again, and we've said it a few times, this community is not for ARC to come preach best practices and all the good stuff we know about certain technologies and trends, right? This is a community for you, the asset owners, to share best practices, lessons learned, things to avoid, etc. I'd be happy to firsthand work with anybody here interested in growing the DTC footprint in their respective organizations. And lastly, I just wanted to say, really appreciate the 2024 DTC Steering Committee. We had a really successful year. I think everybody really stepped up to the plate and helped facilitate some of that engagement, and really looking forward to the 2025 group. This QR code here just has you fill out a quick form if you are not currently on the DTC mailing list. And again, just shoot me an email after this if you'd like to see how we could potentially grow this group. Again, I'm biased. I'm passionate about this group. I'm passionate about getting asset owners like yourselves in a room together to share knowledge, because as an industry, even competitors, there's certain things that we have to collaborate with to get where we want to go, right? Thanks again for the time, folks. We've got our dinner event in the exhibit hall. It starts at 6. It'll be kind of like light foods, finger snacks, and a couple of bars will be open as well. Thanks again for your time today. Thanks again for coming out, folks. And if you need something from us, hey, anybody at ARC, just give us a ping. Thank you.